Good morning, government class. It's Wednesday, April 22nd, and today we're going to be talking about the role of the State Department in conducting American foreign affairs, what the State Department is, what it does. State Department is a part of the executive branch of government, so it is ultimately under the control of the president. The chain of command goes first up through the Secretary of State. This is one of the main cabinet positions, Secretary of State, then on up to the President. Secretary of State is the role that Hillary Clinton played under President Obama. She was Secretary of State for a number of years. John Kerry was Secretary of State for a number of years. Honestly, I'm not even sure who our Secretary of State currently is. Kind of a revolving door in the current administration. And a lot of times, current president seems to be filling these positions, these government positions, that are supposed to be confirmed by the Senate with acting secretaries of whatever. The Constitution requires that these cabinet secretaries, when they're nominated by the president, that they go to the Senate, go to the legislative branch to be approved or confirmed. But when the president names someone to be an acting secretary, then it doesn't have to go to the Senate. And that's not how the Constitution's supposed to work. Acting appointments are only supposed to be temporary. They're only supposed to be kind of in times of crisis or between Senate sessions or something like that. And then the Senate's supposed to come back into session and either confirm or not confirm the candidate. But that's one of the hallmarks of the Trump presidency, is that there have been a whole series of, and still are, a bunch of people who are filling these positions in kind of a temporary capacity, not as Senate confirmed secretaries of state or what have you, which is kind of an unstable way to run the government. But anyway, State Department. The State Department, headed by the Secretary of State, is the president's right arm in foreign affairs. The president names the Secretary of State, subject to confirmation by the Senate. In other words, the Senate has to vote. I believe it's just a majority vote on whether or not to confirm the person that the president has nominated as the Secretary of State. And they're usually confirmed. Presidents don't usually nominate someone who's not going to be confirmed. So it's usually pretty smooth sailing, although there are occasional hiccups and the Senate will push back on a nomination. It is to the Secretary of State and to the Department of State that the president looks for advice and assistance in both the formulation and the conduct of the nation's foreign policy. The Secretary of State ranks first among the members of the president's cabinet. That ranking speaks to the importance of the office and also to the fact that the State Department was the first of the now 15 executive departments that Congress created. I believe that this was straight off the bat at the founding of the country. Knew we were going to need a Secretary of State, formed the State Department pretty much immediately. A Department of Foreign Affairs had been first created in 1781 under the Articles of Confederation. Congress recreated it in 1789 as the first major unit in the executive branch under the Constitution. Later that year, its name was changed to the Department of State. President George Washington appointed Thomas Jefferson as the nation's first Secretary of State in 1789. Bill Clinton appointed the first woman to hold the post, Madeleine Albright, in 1997. Colin Powell, who served as Secretary of State in George W. Bush's first term, from 2001 to 2005, became the first African American to occupy the office. And his successor, Condoleezza Rice, who is both a woman and an African American, served from 2005 to 2009. She was replaced by another major personality, former First Lady and former Senator from New York, Hillary Rodham Clinton, who held the post from 2009 to 2013. This book, of course, is 7 years old. I think, the history book is 7 years old, so I think the government book's about the same age. As of 2013, that, those were the former titles that Hillary Clinton had. She was the former First Lady, former Senator from New York, and then former uh, uh, Secretary of State. Okay. Storm's got me messed up a little bit today. Former Secretary of State. She had not run for president yet. That would come in 2016, so that came after this book was published. Today, the duties of the Secretary relate almost entirely to foreign affairs. That is, they center on the making and conduct of policy and on the management of the department, its many overseas posts, and its workforce of more than 40,000 men and women. Some presidents, most famously Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt, have tended to ignore their secretaries of state and have handled many foreign policy matters personally and quite often directly. Others, notably Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and both Bushes, have chosen instead to rely on their national security advisors. Some chief executives, in particular the earlier ones, have chosen to delegate a large share of the responsibility for matters of foreign policy to the secretary. President Obama made it clear that he considered Secretary Clinton to be a major player in both the formation and the conduct of American foreign policy. Then the organization of the State Department and its components. The State Department is organized along both geographic and functional lines. Some of its agencies, such as the Bureau of African Affairs and the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs, deal with matters involving particular regions of the world. Other agencies have broader missions. For example, the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, sometimes called Drugs and Thugs. Most bureaus are headed by an assistant secretary and include several offices. Thus, both the Office of Passport Services and the Office of Visa Services are found in the Bureau of Consular Affairs. Okay. Let's see. Tomorrow we will get into the overseas representatives of the State Department a little bit more. But for today, let's see, what did I have you do today? You need to send me an email describing the role of the State Department in foreign affairs. Given what we've talked about here today, you can also Google those. That's fine. So anyway, I hope you're able to stay out of the weather. It's 10:20 now. We're supposed to probably be having some off and on bad weather today. So hope you're able to stay out of it. Everybody stay safe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.